Hi, everyone at hashtag B1 Less News and hashtag CDC Whistleblower. Timothy Welsh is going to be incredibly jealous because right now I have Dr. Sherri Tenpenny on the line with us. I know! I'm so excited. Can you say hi really fast, Sherri? Dr. Tenpenny?
Hi, how are you?
This
is fun.
Oh, we just figured this all out, so it's super exciting. We recognize that one of the most important things moving forward to kill the bills, the 110 plus bills that there are throughout the United States, is that the adults out there understand they're next. And Healthy 2020 is a document our government wrote that Dr. Tenpenny just wrote a comprehensive article that we need to understand. So can you take us through the big bullet points of why you wanted to share this with people and what's in this article?
Sure. This all started when all of this legislation hit the pavement at all at the same time. It was, how could this possibly be that all these different states had these bills lying in their drawer somewhere, just waiting to pop them out and all go across, 110 bills on 36 states all at the same time. And I got to thinking about, could this be that the governors of all these states got together and sort of conspired this? And so I went to the governor site. There's a U.S. governor site, found out they have 2 meetings a year, one in Washington, D.C. and one in another state, and started looking through their information. And I found a document that was actually put together, was funded and written by Trust for America's Health, which is funded by Gates, and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, to really talk about eliminating exemptions. And then when I dug a little bit deeper, they kept talking about this Healthy People 2020 guidelines. And when I dug deeper into that, I found that all of these mandatory recommendations, all of these legislative actions were all sourced in the first Healthy People policy that came out in 1980. And in 1980, they set forth some measurable health goals for the country. And to their credit, to the government's credit, one of the biggest things that they were talking about through the 1980s was the effect on tobacco and smoking on health. So they were trying to gear up, and they were fighting all of the tobacco industries at the same time and trying to come up with some policies in terms of obesity and diet and health and smoking to change things. Well, every decade, they have come up with the next Healthy People guidelines. So the Healthy People guidelines that came out in 1980 were for the decades of the 80s. So the first one was actually Healthy People 1990. Then there was Healthy People 2000. And then in Healthy People 2010, they launched this huge, big document that went from having just a few goals up to having 46 different ideas and platforms and 1,200 objectives of the government and the public health department taking over what is supposed to be our health and putting every possible thing that they can into this. They involve 50 different federal agencies. The people that were involved in writing these were even the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Education, and the Department of Transportation.
Oh my God.
And at the end of the day, they came up with all of these recommendations, these 1,200 objectives in 2010 that were to be completed between 2010 and 2020. One of those recommendations in there had to do with what the World Health Organization has declared the decade of vaccines. And the U.S. Public Health Department, Health and Human Services, has written a national vaccine plan that is the roadmap for the 21st century in terms of what they are going to do to get everyone in this country vaccinated, not only children, but adults. And this plan was to be implemented somewhere between 2012 and 2015.
Wow.
Well, here we are at the end of 2015, and they really hadn't done it yet. And we're halfway through the decade of vaccines, and what the World Health Organization declared the decade of vaccines. We're at 2015. So they needed to hurry up and get moving with this. And so this Robert Wood Johnson Foundation paper was actually a big paper that talked about increasing vaccination rates. And inside of that, if you'll look at that link where it says, right where you're looking at right now, it says on page 75 of this document, it lays out how they are to minimize vaccines, to do away with all exemptions except non-medical exemptions, do away with all non-medical exemptions and only have medical exemptions, to increase public education campaigns, which is what we've been seeing everywhere about how everything is pro-vaccine and everything is good, and parents should be put in jail if they don't vaccinate, and doctors should have their license be taken away. They wanted to expand alternate delivery sites, and there have been all kinds of talks about places where they can go into schools, and if the children are 12 years of age or older, they could have a consent to vaccination without the presence of their parents. They wanted to improve these tracking registries and these immunization tracking and registries, that they are tied to electronic medical records. And there's another article on my website that says that your doctor is now giving your personal information over to the government. And one of the things of the boxes they have to check is, what is your immunization status? They want to require universal immunization or vaccination for all healthcare workers, not just of flu shots, but for all ACIP recommended and approved vaccines. And they want to do this as a condition of employment. They want to do it for volunteers, and even for doctors to be able to have privileges inside of the hospital.
Oh my God.
So it's really infuriating of what this is happening. And then I got another document that I'm working on an article for. It is the adult immunization plan that was released on February the 5th. And it goes through talking about how adults are under-vaccinated. It's an opportunity for an expansion of the vaccination plan. There are more than 300 vaccines in the developmental pipeline right now, and about 150 of them are for infectious diseases and conditions like high blood pressure and periodontal disease and depression, and those vaccines are going to be targeted for adults. So here's the two key points about that. Number one is, if we give up our right to refuse right now, if we let these bills get passed, there will be no end in sight of the number of vaccines that they can put on and require for school, and you will have no right to refuse them for your children. The second part is that if we don't have a right to refuse them for our children, will adults have a right to refuse them, and any of these 150 vaccines that are coming that are going to be particularly targeted towards them? So stopping these legislative actions right now are extremely important, not only for today and for our right to refuse, but what's coming down, barreling down the pipeline and down the track at us, is all these additional vaccines that they want to pump into our bodies and give us no right to refuse.
And I don't know if people have been noticing that I've just been clicking through these links, and this is some high-tech, glitzy PR campaign-driven stuff they got going on here. I mean, they are serious about this, Dr. Tenpenny. Oh,
well,
my
the Health and Human Services have over 77,000 employees. And they are actually, like I said, they were being advised by this whole committee of people who are also branching out into the other areas of government. I mean, if you've got the Department of Transportation involved, does that mean that what's going to happen, these federal agencies, if we've got the Department of Transportation involved, could it be that down the road you have to show proof of vaccination to go to a public place like a basketball game or a football game, or to go to the grocery store, or to get your driver's license renewed, or to get on an airplane? I mean, why else would the Department of Transportation be the cop on this?
Yeah,
and the Department of Agriculture, the Education, this is really nuts. Click on that federal agency working group, you will see just how extensive this is. You'll see where all this involves. Those are all the people that are involved in writing the Healthy People 2020 guidelines.
This is some big government with some big plans for all of this. And I was scared before, and now I'm even a little more scared. Thanks, Dr. Tenpenny. But the reality is, can you speak to this? 99.99% of Americans, adults, are under-vaccinated. They aren't up to date. And the best data we have on when adults have to actually vaccinate themselves to protect the herd Our flu shot rate is less than 40% at this point. So adults need to wake up is the biggest message in all of this, and fight these mandates when it's about these kids and going to school, so that by the time it gets to the adults, they can no longer get there. And I think one of the reasons why they're trying to mandate with zero exemptions except for the medical is because they don't want any kids to be able to look at as unvaccinated from a data pool. How do you ever figure out what vaccines do if you have no kids that remain unvaccinated?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Sick and twisted, but true. So the best way to get a hold of Dr. Tenpenny, she does radio and TV all the time to help educate the masses about vaccine information. She's at drtenpenny.com, which is DRTENPENNY.com. And then can you tell us a little bit about just your library while I quickly pull it up here?
Sure. The Vaccine Research Library, we've been building this over the last 3 years. We have a full-time researcher that puts this together. We've got over 6,500 articles in there that show problems associated with vaccines, conflicts of interest, problems with the developmental pipeline, all kinds of problems with the adjuvants. I think that the page on Gardasil has over 100 articles and article links.
Wow.
And so the Vaccine Research Library is there. And the other place, please come and join me on Facebook. And Facebook is Dr. Tenpenny on Vaccines. And it's a very, very busy site. There's a lot of interaction and a lot of exchange there.
Okay, so Dr. Tenpenny has told us that she will do more of these with us as we go over some of her fabulous articles. But for right now, nvicadvocacy.org is where you sign up to learn about all these bills, to fight these bills, and we will have more of these in the future that we'll share at #CVC Whistleblower, #B1Less, and please go visit Dr. Tenpenny at drtenpenny.com. Thanks, Dr. Tenpenny. Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, see you soon. Bye.